So, Mad at Work, mental health and productivity boosting in the workplace. And the agenda for today is as follows. First, I will go through briefly the Mad at Work project, what it is, and then we will have the keynote by Mikael Sallinen, research manager from Finnish Institute of Occupational Health. And after that, we will have 4 presentations from the other, for some other Mad at Work partners, Nixu Corporation, Helvar Corporation, Polytechnic University of Porto, and VTT. At the end, we will have a Q&A session. And for that, I will ask the audience to write your questions uh, to the chat so that we can pick them up from there at the Q&A. The presentation time slots are a bit tight, so it may not be feasible to have questions in there. So with that out of the way, let's go to the Mad at Work. So Mad at Work is an international project. It's established under the ITEA framework and funded nationally. There are project partners mainly from Europe, but also from Republic of Korea. And the inception of the project was the observation that the mental health problems are rapidly becoming the main case of lost work days in knowledge work. So as you can see, nearly 50% of all lost working days have links to the work stress, and the cost is quite significant, not just to the individual, of course, but also to the organizations and to the society at large. So the project set out to have the or aiming at facilitating prevention of these kind of cases and helping maintaining workplace well-being. So as I said, 5 countries have provided partners, 17 partners total. This is a 9.4 million euro budget that has been running for 3.5 years now and will end around November or end of November this year. The consortia are cross-disciplined. We have partners that are looking from the health angle. We have insurance partners. We have partners that are experts in regulations and privacy issues. And then, of course, quite a few technology partners. And the project has carried out seven real-world longitudinal pilots ranging from 1.5 months to up to 6 months, focusing on either the stress as experienced by knowledge workers or the environmental factors that may be reasons for stress, or at least the working comfort is an issue there. And the project had few goals there. We wanted to develop methods to assess the mental conditions using sensor data so that it would be unobtrusive and also something that can be utilized on long term in real life use. The other goal is there to develop novel tools for HR management organizations and then also to the individuals to support managing their own well-being at work. And then looking, very importantly, looking at the privacy safeguards. Uh, because if you measure something at the workplace, and especially if you measure workers at the workplace, that requires a quite strict privacy, uh, uh, sort of taking care of the privacy issues there. So that's the project overall, and these are the sort of targets or create tools that we wanted to create. So individual support tools, you can see the organizations that have focus in there, the organizational tools, and then looking after the environmental comfort. So that was or is Mad at Work in a nutshell. And with that, we are then moving on to the keynote. And Mikael, if you please take the screen.
Yes, wait a minute. So, hello everyone. I guess you can hear
Yes,
me and see my slide.
yes,
Great. So maybe a few words about myself first. So as Atte, you said, I work as a research manager at the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health, and I have been working for this organization for more than 25 years now. So quite a long career within one institute. And my academic background is in psychology, and I have been studying mostly working hours, health, and safety in different occupational settings. And today I will talk about digital data, methods, and solutions to promote well-being in knowledge work. And I would like to thank the organizers for this invitation and opportunity to present here. And I have divided my talk into sort of three sections. First, I will say something about knowledge work itself, then something about well-being at work, and finally, I will discuss so-called data-driven management of well-being at knowledge work. So let's start with this term knowledge work. I think this term has been characterized very aptly and briefly as thinking for a living, whereas the term knowledge worker has been characterized in a much longer way. For example, already in 1950s, Peter Drucker defined that these workers are high-level workers who apply theoretical and analytical knowledge acquired through formal training to develop products and services. And later on in the 1990s, he foresaw that the most valuable asset of a 21st century institution will be its knowledge workers and their productivity. And perhaps what we are missing in this sentence is this well-being. And that's the topic we have today. When we look at the current EU statistics, it seems that this forecast by Peter Drucker hit quite right, or at least not entirely wrong, as today some 75 million people work in so-called knowledge-intensive services in the EU, accounting for around 40% of total employment in the EU. And if we next a little bit discuss this other term, important term, well-being at work, I would say that it's even perhaps more complex than this term knowledge work. Actually, in 2010, the then Director General of the Finnish Institute of Occupational Health, Harri Vainio, organized an international conference around this topic. And in that conference, well-being was seen as the subjective state of being healthy, happy, contented, comfortable, and satisfied with one's life. So quite positive definition. And well-being at work, it was seen as a situation where employees flourish and achieve their full potential for both their own benefit and that of the organization. So again, very positive definition of this well-being at work, this term well-being at work. And in that particular conference, it was also discussed that to achieve this kind of very positive situation and working conditions, we need to take into account multiple individual work and society-related factors, such as individuals' health, the workplace as a whole, management processes, that kind of things, and also environmental factors. And I think that despite this complexity of this term, well-being at work, there are at least two clear conclusions when we think about these digital methods and solutions and promotion of well-being in knowledge work. First, I think that this kind of definition, it offers us multiple avenues or factors we may target with our methods and solutions. And secondly, it seems to be quite clear that we may also use these methods and solutions not only to manage risks, but also strengthen kind of positive elements of work, our resources. And one very useful model to be used when we apply our methods and solutions is this job demands resources model developed by Bakker, Demeruti, and Schauffele more than 20 years ago. Here you can see a very, to a great extent, simplified version of the model based on the publication of Rebecca Brauchley and her co-authors. And as you can see, it has two pathways. One is called pathogenic pathway, and the other one is called satulogenic pathway. And the former begins, as you can see, with job demands, such as work interruptions and time pressure. And this pathway, it ends with stress-related symptoms and conditions like insomnia, exhaustion, and psychosomatic disorders. Whereas the latter, this salutogenic pathway, it begins with, for example, manager and peer support and appreciation, and it ends with very positive symptoms, if you like job satisfaction, affective commitment, job-related enthusiasm, and work engagement. And I think that in everyday life, also in knowledge work, we have both of these pathways present. And that's why I think it's important to take them both into account when making decisions what to measure by our digital methods and what to develop by our digital solutions to promote well-being at work. Of course, one clear so-called precondition for using our digital methods and solutions to promote well-being at work is digitization and digitalization of workplaces themselves. Here I have picked up one figure from a very recent EU-level report that very nicely describes the main elements needed to really be able to implement so-called data-driven management model in the workplace. And when we think of workplaces of knowledge-intensive services, I think it's quite clear that there are many elements already in place to use this so-called data-driven management model and these digital methods and solutions to promote well-being at work. So maybe we can ask, why haven't we already successfully implemented this model? Is it so that we are still a little bit missing effective and feasible digital methods and solutions for this particular purpose? And to answer this question, I actually conducted, let's call it a mini literature search to see what level of evidence we have that, for example, mobile and wearable trackers promote employee health and well-being. And I limited my search to so-called systematic reviews and meta-analyses because they summarize very nicely the results of the best original studies conducted until then. And secondly, I focused only on those systematic reviews that addressed either physical activity, sleep, or stress. And let's next shortly review the main conclusions from these six high-quality systematic reviews listed here. I know that this slide is extremely busy, and my purpose is not to go through all details I have written on the slide. So let's try to pick up the most relevant messages. As to the physical trackers, I think that the current evidence suggests that they at least have potential to increase physical activity, which is a well-known factor underlying health and well-being. However, when we look at the conclusions drawn from sleep and stress trackers, it seems that they are still mostly under validation. But on the other hand, it seems that there are opportunities in the future to use these devices at least as part of health and well-being interventions. And secondly, I did also kind of mini literature search to identify those e-health, so digital solutions that have been used in occupational settings, and especially to evaluate the effectiveness of these digital solutions. And these 5 systematic reviews I have listed, they cover those digital solutions that provide, for example, guided or unguided cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness-based therapy, stress management training, and various psychoeducative programs. And if we next look at again this busy slide and try to pick up the main conclusions and messages, I think that these systematic reviews, based on them, it seems that these digital solutions actually are quite promising, at least in terms of the efficiency in improving mental well-being. And one finding of interest is that there seems to be very little improvement in the effectiveness over the past decade, despite all technological advancements within the same period of time. And one reason for this finding may be that the use of these solutions is not optimally timed due to a lack of valid, up-to-date data on employees' well-being. And I think that in this our project, Mad at Work, we have made several attempts to develop so-called new generation methods to provide work organizations with the possibility to collect up-to-date data on employees' well-being and thus help these organizations time their health and well-being interventions optimally. One example of these methods is based on data collected from mouse, keyboard, and application usage as a part of normal working day. And one clear advantage of this kind of data is that it could be collected without causing any or very little burden on employees themselves. Another example is so-called organization parameter. And with this method, it will be possible to collect relevant data, for instance, self-reported productivity and stress, and also about factors underlying these experiences, on a weekly basis and also at the organizational level. And I think that we will hear more about this method later on in this webinar. And in this Mad at Work project, we have been also validating these new generation methods against data collected by so-called gold standard methods. And we have, for example, collected saliva samples to determine physiological stress levels. And we have used diary to collect data about self-reported work and sleep hours, as well as objective data on cognitive performance. And our preliminary results, they suggest that there are significant associations between, for example, self-reported stress and productivity collected by the organization parameter and cortisol levels, sleep duration, and cognitive flexibility observed in our intensive measurements by our gold standard methods. And I think that in all these preliminary findings, they suggest that it will be possible to collect valid data on employee well-being quite frequently at the organizational level without causing no or very little burden on employees themselves in the near future. Another reason, so another reason for not seeing so much of an improvement in the effectiveness of these digital solutions may be that these solutions have not been implemented in an optimal manner. And to tackle this challenge, I have listed here 6 main features of health and well-being interventions that are known to determine to a large extent how successful these interventions actually are. And if you look at these features, it's easy to see that features such as having all relevant parties on board, having a possibility to personalize interventions and also scale them according to the context at hand are amongst perhaps the most important features. So based on current research, it can be assumed that those digital methods and solutions that succeed to incorporate these particular features will prove to be the most successful in the future. And to conclude, I think that it's fair to say, based on our research evidence until now, that there is a lot of evidence to support this idea that these digital methods, they carry and they have potential to promote employee health and well-being in knowledge work. But of course, we are not yet there, so to say, but we need to take some more steps to really be helpful for organizations and help them to improve their employees' well-being and health. And I think that these steps I have listed here are amongst perhaps the most important ones. So promoting user acceptance, ensuring the validity, integrity, and protection of especially personal data, increasing the effectiveness of digital solutions to promote employee health and well-being, and also making these solutions feasible for those workplaces that do not have so much resources and know-how how to use these methods in practice. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. And on the second bullet, which was the privacy and data security, we are then segueing it to the next presentation, which is by Nixu Corporation. So Anna, if you can take the screen, thank you.
Super, thank you very much. Now let's see, I don't have my camera on. Now you should be able to see me and also see my presentation, right?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Anna Rossi. I'm a data protection lawyer at Nixu. Nixu is a cybersecurity services company assisting our clients in daily cybersecurity matters, and we help our clients ensure business resilience. And as part of our service offering, we also provide data protection and legal advice relating to different security and privacy questions. And that's where I come in. So I advise our clients in a range of legal questions regarding data use, adoption or development of new technologies, data sharing matters, or data sharing arrangements. And I also assist our clients in developing different compliance processes and governance models that fit their needs for digitalization and data use. And today I'll give you a short presentation on ensuring privacy in innovative use of well-being data. I have also divided my presentation into 3 parts. So first, we will look at what personal data is. After that, we will discuss embedding privacy into the design of technology. And the third and final part is about proportionality and how to ensure proportionality when we use well-being data. It's quite a short presentation, but packed with a lot of information, so I hope you will find this useful. Then let's dive right into it. So, what is personal data? Personal data is really any information that relates to an identified or identifiable individual. It's a very, very broad term legally. So this identified or identifiable individual can really be anyone, any living being. It can be a consumer, it can be an employee, a student, or any other living person that we collect personal data about. Usually when we talk about personal data, people tend to think of personal data being a name, social security number, passport, maybe personal address, but it's so much more than that. It's really any data set that can be combined with some other data and then reveal something about an individual. IP addresses can in certain contexts be considered personal data. Keystrokes on a laptop, habits that you can derive from different wearables, for example, heartbeats, stress levels measured from wearable devices, or anything else that directly or indirectly relates to an individual is personal data. Now, all personal data is not regulated in the same way. Some personal data is more sensitive than others. And so we have certain personal data sets that can be categorized as sensitive or even something that we call special category personal data. Special category personal data, if we start with this one, these are data that in the past and unfortunately still today have been used for discriminating against individuals. Special category personal data, this is health data. It's data relating to someone's religion, political affiliation, sexual orientation, and others like this. It's a set list of personal data categories listed in the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. Now, when it comes to well-being data, there is no one definition for well-being data, especially not a legal definition that we can find in data protection law. But health data is really any data that concerns health, any data pertaining to the health status of an individual, which reveals information about physical or mental health. So there we can see that well-being data is probably pretty often categorized as special category data because it reveals something about someone's mental or physical health. But then, as we saw in the previous presentation, well-being data can be so much more. It doesn't necessarily directly relate to somebody's health. But in any case, we should always treat it as something that is more sensitive than a name, for example. Now, the more sensitive data is, the more we need to do to ensure that what we do with it is legal. So collection and use of more sensitive data will always require careful planning and really knowing your legal framework that regulates the use of that data. So the more sensitive data, the more we need to do to make sure that what we're doing is legally okay and correct. What do we need to consider then when we want to use technology for processing well-being data? Personal data must always be collected and processed in accordance with a set of key principles, key GDPR principles. And I will show them on this slide. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, but let's have a look at, let's discuss some of the most important ones for well-being data. Here you can see 6 key GDPR principles that we always need to abide by when we process any personal data, including well-being data. Lawfulness is all about making sure that we know our legal framework and that we have a legal ground for processing data, including collecting data. We need to make sure that we obtain consent if we need consent. We need to make sure that we abide by national legislation regulating use of data, for example. This is particularly relevant in the employment setting because we have lots of national employment laws that we need to abide by. Lawfulness and fairness is also very much about ensuring that the individual whose data we collect knows what's going on and that it's ethically correct to do what we're doing with the data. And this is particularly relevant for well-being data. Purpose limitation, that's all about defining what you're going to do with the data before you collect it. And you need to communicate this purpose to the individual whose data you're collecting and using. Purpose limitation is also all about making sure that we don't use data in a way that would be surprising for the individual whose data we collect. But we need to make sure that the purpose is always intact and something that the person can expect. Accuracy, that was mentioned in the previous presentation. Quality of data is absolutely crucial. We need to make sure that the quality is top-notch, especially if we're deriving new information about an individual based on the well-being data that we're collecting from them. This is particularly relevant for wearable devices, where we know that there is a very different framework than for medical devices, for example. Medical devices have different standards for making sure that data really is accurate and up to date. We don't have similar standards for wearable well-being devices, for example. And integrity and confidentiality, that is absolutely crucial. This is all about information security, data security, making sure that we protect the well-being data that we collect from individuals. We need to make sure that only the people who really need to access this type of data and use this type of data get access to it, that there aren't data breaches and that we don't reveal the data that individuals have entrusted us with, that we don't reveal it to people who don't have a right to know it. And this is absolutely crucial for well-being data because of its sensitive nature. We need to pay particular attention to data security. Then in addition to these 6 core principles, we need to respect something that is called the principle of proportionality. Now, proportionality is a very legal term, but it's all about finding solutions that are necessary, appropriate, and that pursue legitimate objectives. When we design new technologies, when we want to collect and use well-being data in new ways, we need to make sure that everything that we're doing is necessary, appropriate, and that we pursue legitimate objectives. It's really about balancing the intensity of the potential harms that we provide or to individuals when we collect data about them. Harms or interferences is the right legal term. So it's all about balancing the intensity of the interference with individuals with the importance or legitimacy of the objectives that we're trying to pursue when we want to collect and use data. So it's a balancing exercise. And the more sensitive some data is, the more we need to do to make sure that there is an appropriate balance between our objective and the potential interference with individuals. Sometimes an objective can be very legitimate, it can be very desirable, and it can be very much right and fair. But the means to obtain that objective, they may be so invasive that they just don't justify this noble aim that we're trying to achieve. So we need to make sure that there always is a proper balance between the aim that we're trying to achieve and the means that we use to achieve this aim. So when you think back to this presentation, and if you remember the word proportionality, think about balancing exercise. Now, what are some of the key themes or tools that we can consider when trying to make sure that what we're doing is proportionate and okay when we want to use well-being data in new technologies? I've listed some things here on this slide. The first one is all about confidentiality. I mentioned it already. Make sure that you keep data confidential and secure because well-being data will always be more sensitive to a person. So make sure that you pay particular attention to its confidentiality. And really respect local employment laws when processing employee data. Some employment laws might be very strict. They might tell you what you can or even what you cannot do with employee data. So make sure that you know what the local employment laws say about processing employee data. When exploring this national legal framework, pay particular attention to what's the division of responsibilities between occupational health service and employer responsibilities, for example, because that will be relevant for well-being and health data. Place individuals in control of their data. This is very much about giving power to individuals. This is something that if we talk about sensitive data that says something about an individual. So always put the individual in control of their data. Ensure that individuals know what you're doing with data, what you want, why you collect it, and what you want to do with it. And make sure that they actually understand what it is that you're telling them. So make sure data use is transparent and understandable. Here, something to explore is, for example, centralized employer-controlled solutions or versus decentralized individual-controlled solutions. So when do we use technology solutions that are controlled by an employer, and when do we use solutions technologies that are decentralized and controlled by the individual whose data we collect and use? Consider consent-based approaches to data use. Obtaining consent can be tricky in an employment context, but due to the sensitivity of well-being data, it might pretty often be something that we need to do. It will obviously depend on the context, but do consider consent-based approaches when you want to use well-being data. And then finally, because of the sensitivity of well-being data, anonymize it as much as possible and make sure that you understand what anonymization means. It's both a legal and a technical concept. Legally, it has quite a high bar. So really make sure that you know what anonymization means and that it really isn't possible to re-identify somebody from a set that you have anonymized. And then if we look at the blue box, always conduct something that we call data protection impact assessments when you want to use data in a new way or develop a new tool, new technologies. This is an assessment regulate or coming directly from the GDPR. It's all about describing data use and about identifying risks, data protection risks associated with data use. And because of the sensitive nature of wellbeing data, do include ethical considerations in your assessment as well. Quite a heavy set of 3 slides. My key message is really place the individual in the middle of what it is that you're doing, and always know your legal framework. And do remember to conduct these data protection and ethical impact assessments. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That was shedding light to often somewhat murky depths of regulations. An excellent presentation there. And next, it will be a different kind of lighting discussion by Helvar Corporation and Omar Negin. Henry, please take the floor.
Hello, yes, just a moment. All right. Hi, my name is Omar Nasir, and this is my colleague Negin Karimi. We are data scientists at Helvar. So a little bit about Helvar itself. We are a lighting control company, mainly based in Finland, but we also have offices in UK, Sweden, as well as having presence in more than 70 other countries. Now, the main focus of Helvar is lighting control systems. And what we mean by lighting control systems is you can imagine a building with hundreds and thousands of luminaires, and then we have a network of sensors. So we kind of have this this centralized intelligence, which we use to smartly control the lights. And now the obvious benefit, of course, is sustainability. We want to conserve energy, but at the same time, we also want to provide the correct lighting environment to the occupants of the indoor space. So when we talk about lighting intelligence, you can think of it this way, that we have a network of sensors and luminaires which are then providing us IoT data. And we can use this data to create an understanding of how the buildings are being used. So my colleague and I, we are working at a team called Future Lighting in Helvar. And our primary responsibility is to collect this data and analyze this data and basically understand, like I said, how the buildings are being used. But in the context of Mad at Work, we wanted to utilize the knowledge of lighting intelligence and then see, can we combine it with other data sources and also try to understand how we can improve well-being in indoor spaces. So this presentation basically contains 2 projects which we utilizes this multimodal approach, where we combine the data from the lighting intelligence systems and also the data from other building systems to understand and see if we can improve the well-being at workplace. So one example of that is indoor air quality. Why is air quality important? It's because you can find any study online which says that, yeah, we spend over 90% of our time indoors. So because we spend so much time indoors, ventilation is quite crucial, because if the spaces are not properly ventilated, the poor indoor air quality can lead to severe negative health effects. And probably the most important indicator of this is the carbon dioxide levels. So if the CO2 levels are very high, they can have adverse impacts on the human health. For example, increasing blood pressure, raising heart rates. And then it also has an inverse relationship with productivity and tiredness levels. So one common indoor air quality investigation we wanted to do was to utilize this CO2 data. You can see ARANET for CO2 sensors. We have partnered with them, and we are using their sensors in our sensing platform. But the main point to take away here is that they provide information on how you can read these CO2 levels. So as we all know, 420 ppm, that corresponds to fresh outdoor air, but we would like to keep the indoor CO2 levels below 1000. Then they can, of course, exceed 1000 ppm and above 1400 ppm. There are studies which show that brain cognitive function can decrease by 50%, and that can have a negative impact on occupants' well-being as well as their productivity. So, like I mentioned before, lighting intelligence is quite related to sensors. And one of the most important sensors we have is a motion sensor. So in a building, we utilize these motion sensors to see or to measure what is the occupancy in a certain space and use that information to control the luminaires. But when it comes to air quality, we want to see what is the relationship between between the changes in indoor air quality and the data we are getting from these occupancy sensors. This is kind of advantageous because we have already established a network of occupancy sensors, and we can see from the data that what would be the impact on air quality if there is prolonged occupancy. So this is quantified by measuring the density of CO2 and also the historical occupancy data, because you can see that what times, for example, a certain meeting room is occupied, when do you get peaks in occupancy, and then how does it correlate with air quality. So if we take a moment and look at the graph here, I have intentionally showed you two different indoor spaces, and the bottom indoor space is from an area which is quite well ventilated. So even though you can see there is consistent occupancy, there are people in that space, the CO2 levels never really exceed, or they never really increase. But in the top part, we have the same data from a very small meeting room. And there you can see that when there is occupancy, the CO2 levels show a significant change. Now, we also know that occupancy is a leading indicator. So you will first have occupancy in a room, and then the air quality will degrade in the space if the space is not properly ventilated. And this is quite important because we want to differentiate between a poorly ventilated and a properly ventilated space. So we ran a pilot in our office, and we examined various meeting rooms with the capacity of one person. And we wanted to analyze that what is the impact of occupancy on the CO2 data. So by analyzing the duration of occupancy and how much the peak is with the CO2, we can come up with some values that how long that room should be used before it starts to have a negative impact on the occupant's well-being. So the goal was to summarize this information concisely and display in each room. And you can see some of the examples here. So one example is that, yeah, the air quality remains at a good level for 13 minutes, but then after 20 minutes, it will degrade. And then we were also trying to give some information to the users that if that happens, or if you have been in this room for 30 minutes, please open the door, open the windows to allow it to properly ventilate. Now, one thing to remember is that this is not going to happen in every building on every room, because it is majorly dependent on how the ventilation system is configured. So what was the user feedback? We let this pilot run for approximately 8 weeks, during which Interviews were conducted at different periods of time, and the one thing that I want to talk about here is personal action. So, like I mentioned, that we were also giving this information to the user that for X minutes it's okay to be there, and then the air quality can degrade. But the overall rate of personal action was quite low, meaning that the number of people who were sufficiently concerned about poor air quality, they didn't really take any action. And we found that users might not fully read the information or might not act on it, which is kind of understandable. Is that if you have a primary purpose in that room, which is to be in the meeting, then a secondary piece of information that might not get the user's focus or attention. So the key takeaways is that yes, people understand when the air quality is degraded, that it has an impact on their health, but they are generally not aware. So maybe education and awareness is quite important. The intervention should be done automatically, that the ventilation system should proactively react to this, to the worsening air quality. Of course, we try to present the information as minimally as possible, but then again, text is always, it's a bit hard to read all the text that you provide to the users. So maybe a more impactful system could be just a blinking system or a simple lighting system, traffic light system, for example, and also provide a clear plan of action, like open the door or the window. With that having said, I will now hand over to my colleague who can then go through the second project that we did.
Yes, I will present our results for the analysis of the HVAC performance for improving indoor air quality and energy efficiency. HVAC systems are one of the largest consumer of energy in a building, and energy consumption through the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning represent a significant portion of energy usage. And here we have focused on the ventilation component of the HVAC system. One of the challenge here could be over ventilation, which is expensive and consumes more air conditioner energy than necessary. And on the other hand, improper ventilation leads to decreased indoor air quality. The main idea here is to design a recommendation system that suggests optimal times for adjusting the ventilation rate, aiming to improve the air quality while optimizing for energy saving simultaneously. And we collaborated with the facility manager at the Nova Hospital, and we have employed CO2 data, supply and exhaust air volume. Supply airflow is the airflow from the outside to inside, and the exhaust air volume is the airflow in the reverse direction from inside to the outside. And as well as we have used the occupancy data from the Helvar's occupancy sensor. And we analyze relationship between the occupancy data and the CO2 data, and present the result of this relationship by the visualization method. For example, in this plot, you can see the average of the occupancy data by the green line and the CO2 data by the gray lines during 2 weeks. In the first step, we check this data just in 2 weeks, and we can see the CO2 levels have a tendency to go higher than 1000 ppm frequency. And it means that this space needs to improve the air quality. And we suggest that probably they can consider improving the air quality there. And then they change the airflow, they increase the airflow. And again, we check the CO2 data and occupancy data after the modification. In this table, we have the result of the CO2 data as a percentage of the value before modification and after that. It is understandable that just 2% of data is more than 1,000 before the modification. It's not a significant value, but anyway, hospitals have strict requirements and even value more than 800 ppm would be a high value. And yes, then in another part, we check again the CO2 data and occupancy data. And in this part of the hospital, overventilation happens since most of the CO2 data are between the 400 and 600. So we suggest saving more energy in such area. And then we check the effect of the dropping up in such area. And we can see that how CO2 data increase after the modification, but still air quality is in the safety level after the modification. And here I can mention some challenge. For example, most HVAC system are legacy and do not have the cloud APIs or easily accessible inference. And then we have experimented with the real-time predictive system, which can produce recommendation on how to modify ventilation rate based on the current occupancy conditions. However, running a practical experiment remains a challenge due to the lack of the availability of such system. And indoor air quality is a significantly overlooked area of well-being and productivity decrease given nature of the legacy HVAC systems. Many market solutions provide the ability to sense and make informed decisions based on the current conditions, but some work is still needed in developing fully autonomous self-learning system that require no input from user. And finally, even a straightforward data analysis can provide significantly actionable insights as demonstrated with this pilot. Yeah, that's our analysis related to Method Work project.
Thank you. So using sensors and then utilizing the existing sensors in the buildings to guide other systems.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And then the next one is Simao from Polytechnic University of Porto. Sima, please take the floor.
So, greetings everyone. And first of all, I would like to express our gratitude for the opportunity to share our work among the present. And this goes to VTT and the managing team behind this webinar today. And of course, we would like to extend our gratitude and greetings to everyone present and listening to these presentations. For the participants that don't already know me, my name is Simão Ferreira. I'm a PhD candidate in health data science, and I'm working in Porto School of Health, specifically in the Center for Translational Health and Medical Biotechnology Research, alongside Professor Matilde Rodrigues and Professor Nuno, where we every day strive to make data-driven decision support and recommendation to pursue the best outcomes in almost every branch of health-related research, and here specifically in stress detection and mitigation. This will be a short presentation about our Portuguese solution and the project Med at Work. And to give you a quick perspective, here's our participating partners in the national consortium. We have 2 research and development centers and universities, Porto School of Health and ISEP with Professor Fátima, AGAs, specifically Medis with Henrique and Nuno, and Glint with Rita, and Biometric with Luís. Here we see a span of what is Med at Work's various models and solutions to improve employees' well-being, engagement, and performance. And we position ourselves in the category of the individual support tools alongside ETRI and High Iberia. And now we will focus a little bit about our specific solution. We developed an integrated stress detection and recommendation system that is based on a totally unobtrusive video plethysmography system. And to be clear, we use the webcam as a remote PPG sensor. Our solution is capable of predicting stress on set and also address trends of long-term stress. We adapted and developed an health toolkit with 8 dimensions to establish how the recommendations would be presented to every participant. And since our recommendation system is ranking based from 1 to 5, but it's also content based and it builds upon this ground of the health toolkit. We will further have the opportunity to see some dimensions of our recommendations, but this is an evolving system with the capability of implementing new recommendations and rules for presenting the recommendations when we want, with very little entropy in the future. But how did we got here? So if you're here present today, you probably know that stress detection is a sensible yet a very hard variable to address. We started by building a theoretical framework for all the blocks that we needed, gathered evidence from the literature and needs from end users regarding stress monitoring with some focus groups, and perceptions from a transcultural survey that had more than 600 participants, despite being quite long and informative. For our video plethysmography system, we did a laboratorial validation with ECG, different lighting scenarios, and workload as well to validate this totally unobtrusive physiological data collection solution. We developed another systematic review to collect and identify the most effective and commonly used interventions for stress mitigation, being onset and also long stress. And we build our model with a recall of approximately 95%, where we identify the appropriate data collection variables. Lastly, we compiled our evidence-based recommendations in a library and developed biofeedback-based interventions for the immediate stress recommendations that are quite lacking in the literature. To finish our roadmap, we designed a data collection in laboratorial and in real-life settings environments, and did a very effective data management between every member of the Portuguese consortium in order to maintain anonymity for all the participants. Engaging the solutions satisfaction and development questionnaires, did several reassessments for the data collection software, and now we are happy that we adapted our protocol for office and also for home desk setups, being able to collect data everywhere and every time possible. This is our digital coach diagram and the rationale for the stress detection, where we can see the physiological data driving the motion towards the recommendations. And this is something that we wanted to address from day one. So these 3 possible data paths for the stress detection. We can have onset detection of stress, of single stress peaks, where there is a trigger in the alarm system. We can have a detection of long-term stress, where we must address real changes in lifestyle, like presented here: sleep, exercise, weight management, optimism and good deeds, social relationships, amongst others. And finally, but not least, prevention. This digital coach can not only function as being a supportive tool for stress, but also a prevention kit. This is a look at the architecture of the data that we gathered, and how does it transmit to everyone. So the data is collected and passes through the classification model, and we have 2 possibilities. Now the personal data and recommendation, and in the near future, aggregated data and visualization of teams and their well-being. Going deeper into our system, It is a video plethysmography system, remote video plethysmography, PPG, whatever you want to call it. But it's based on the hand PPG method with fine-tuning. We also have an AlexNet emotion recognition system with 7 outputs being neutral, angry, disgust, fear, happy, sad, and surprise. We have ocular data as well, being blinking analysis, duration of blink, blinking frequency, and an alertness variable called perclus. This is a look on how the recommendation system is designed, and we have some example of work-related recommendations here, such as work-life balance, finding meaning at work, amongst others. In this slide, we can see part of our evidence-based recommendations library, starting from the top with the planned modules for the software and the main themes for recommendations, going from task management, healthy sleep habits, structured pauses, mindfulness, promotion of active and healthy lifestyles, the possibility to have this customized intervention, and others that we are still developing, like biofeedback training for onset stress mitigation. This is a really quick look to our best results and the needed attributes to have this prediction model. We found that the random forest is the algorithm that fits the best in our solution, having the extracted HRV features of AVNN, RMSSD, the emotions angry and fear, the variable perclus, the base weight of the person, and type of sleeping schedules, bringing our results to almost 95% recall and 88% F1 score. Having all of this in mind, we have achieved quite interesting results through this project, starting with the contributions to the field of remote video plethysmography, stress detection, and video feed data management, bringing new evidence and shedding some light on the possibilities of using these tools for managing personal well-being and performance. We also built some ground in developing not only a data-focused solution, but listening to the end users and their experiences in order to ensure comfort, safety, and performance. We are quite happy with our evaluation methods, being compiled with gold standard scales, adapted health toolkits for the initial health assessment, and being able to build from the ground up through this basis. We've developed an evidence-based recommendation library that is focused on stress mitigation and targets important issues in the workplace, and specifically for knowledge workers. We will be implementing in the future biofeedback principles and interventions that focus on stress mitigation on set, since this is what the literature is lacking a bit in the moment. And now we can see some of our technical and scientific disseminations to the moment, and we have quite a few more in the near future. To end, I will just give you a quick demonstration of our solution, starting with myself. So this is just a video of how it works in our pilot. So I'm at home gathering some physiological data. As you can see, we have the emotions, the heart rate, the blinking analysis as well. This is fulfilling 2 questionnaires that we have on a daily basis. We also had 4 random labels of stress throughout the day, starting with 0 to 10. This is what we see now. And here we see our recommendation system that is already running. This is a video for IT review, so we are doing an account for IT review, and you can see that it's working now. So we must just wait a little bit. Yes, and you can see now the health toolkit that I was mentioning before that has a lot of questions, but they can be fulfilled from time to time from the participant. Doesn't have to be a one-time thing, just so that the participant is not overwhelmed by the questionnaire. And here we can see a demonstration of how the notifications come. Just for demonstration purposes, we are doing a ping of 30 seconds for every new recommendation. This will not be the final solution, as you can see. And then the person can just check the recommendation, give it a rank from 1 to 5, and in the no more section, they can see the evidence-based recommendations and where this recommendation is coming from. And lastly, we just wanted to show you a sample from the same kind of data that we have from PPG and also from the Polar H10. Our laboratorial validation is with ECG, the BioPack MP36, but this is just for visualization and for demonstration purposes. And that's also a paper stating that the Polar H10 is 99.4% accurate. And we can just see that the data is really close to the Polar H10 just for these visualization purposes. This is both real-time data in our solution and also in the Polar H10. And that's it from our part, and thank you for being present and listening to our work development. We will be more than happy to have a discussion and answers in the question and answer session, and thank you once again.
Thank you. And then last presentation for today is by VTT. And Julia, Lena, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you, Otto. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm the presenter today. Lena will help me, in particular, if there will be difficult and interesting questions. And I'm a senior researcher from VTT, Nature Technical Research Center of Finland, and my background is on data-driven services and application and information design, information visualization, sensing technology. And I'm presenting here actually the work of the group of researchers from VTT. You can see the names here. Our background is very different here, but very suitable to address the challenges of stress detection. We have a background on stress detection technologies, on sensing technology, on stress data related analytics, AI, machine learning. So and also software developer here. So we have a very good and enthusiastic group to address the challenges that have been presented to you with previous speakers. So my last presentation is dedicated in particular to yet another piece of let's say, technology and developments related to organization well-being and organization barometer in particular. So if we look like how the organizational well-being is tackled now in many organizations, of course, everyone will know that currently this well-being is assessed by long questionnaires. They are infrequent and they might be affected by current situation. There is also time lag between collection data, answering the question, processing, presenting data, decision making, improving, and then the time for action will come. Then again, new survey and questionnaire will arrive. So naturally, some continuous measurements and capturing instant feedback and presenting well-being data for exploration can certainly help. And that's why we decided to take this challenge in Better Work project. And so we decided to do at least to research, implement some concepts related to organization barometer. We call it in a way like continuously updating data-driven well-being map. The aim was from the beginning to collect well-being stress data using various means, unobtrusively collected through sensors, and convenient, easy to use, easy to fill self-reports, and also to integrate these using innovative visualization means, information flow means, to this concept and prototype of organizational barometer. And yes, as also mentioned earlier, we, in particular, this project, we target knowledge-intensive professions here. So to compile this to you in, let's say, two main research questions that we VTT researchers were targeting here in this project, we were thinking about what kind of technological means can support prolonged stress and stressor detection. The requirements was to use unobtrusive, semi-unsupervised means, and of course the accuracy should be acceptable. And then the second research question we set for us, what kind of information design would support individual but also organizational reflective thinking and action taken to improve well-being at work on, again, individual and organizational level. So my presentation, it contains, I would say, two parts. First of all, I quickly explain you how we approach to these two research questions and what kind of methods we have been using, what kind of sensors we decided to use and why. And then the second part of my presentation is I will hopefully try to show you some designs that we did and also some prototypes that we developed. Okay, so as you may know, of course, this stress detection is not a very new area, but still it is a new, in a way, an immature research area, because most of the stress detection studies and data analysis has happened in other lab studies. So there is very little published data sets that would allow to analyze and detect the stress, but there are many sensing technology is available. You can see here on my slide some examples. One can measure the physiological data. It's considered the most objective approach to measure the stress using heart rate variability, skin conductivity. Stress can be also measured using behavioral data, like data collected from mobile phones, movements detections, computer data usage. Then, of course, other sensors can be, in principle, usually like depth camera, face expression, and speech, the speech recognition. And there is, of course, sensors that can be detected some environmental condition in the mails, and also, of course, there are commercial solutions for personal use available in the market. But then one think about the selection of particular technology. It is usually the trade-off of obtrusiveness, accuracy, and privacy, yeah, and the context of usage. But then, of course, independent of how the data, well-being data, is collected, the data is not meaningful if the user is not able to understand it, and most importantly, to act on it. And if you look on what is available around, they are available some research prototypes. Some of them you can see here. I collected for you some examples. Some are targeting individual use to present stress and well-being data, and less, let's say, research. They are all research prototypes, yeah, and less research prototypes targeting collective group data visualizations. Actually, you can see from the examples here that fish-based visualization is very popular. These solutions employ various, let's say, visualization techniques. Some of the most simple ones use timelines, calendars, charts. Less solutions that use some, let's say, advanced technology like visual metaphors, analogies. In fact, metaphors is a promising, and we see it's relatively new approach to visualize well-being data, especially at real condition at work environment. They are also proposed actually many systems for other domains, like to address this collective awareness, like for example, the election debates have been advancedly visualized, but well-being data for group usage at work environment is a still research area. So how we started with this? Of course, very quickly to give you just a glimpse of impression how we did this. Of course, as previously early presented by our colleague from Finnish Occupational Health Institute, there is stress, and stress research is not the new area. Job demand resource research has been active research area in 80s. Started already in 80s. So we use this, of course, as a background for our designs and developments. We also use some psychological well-known theories, like, for example, self-determination theory, which says about the psychological needs that the worker may have at work. We also use some other theories, like flow theories, the psychology of optimal experience and happiness, which also say us something about the importance of what people do, job content, how they use or are able to use the skills and resources they have. We also have been talking with end users. We leverage VTT as a test bed, more than 2,000 researchers. So we run various polls to understand mainly what kind of language people use. Then they talk about their challenges. Then they talk about what kind of content that they do at work. And we also was working with Finnish companies to see what kind of reason for stress they mentioned more often, what kind of information and content they would like or comfortable to share with their colleagues, and what kind of information they would be comfortable to share, for example, with line managers. It's not that, let's say, new information, it's rather confirmation on the literature research. And as I say, the most important for us, because we really wanted to measure something, we wanted to implement these concepts in a reporting application. For us, it was very important to understand what kind of language, how people express these concepts in own language to make this design understandable also for them. Yeah. In addition, we also run cross-cultural survey from using in 5 European countries. 700 respondents to understand better about how people feel about organizational barometer. So as a result of all this huge work with users, we kind of decided and identified the most important concept that we would like to measure. They are, of course, emotions and stress, positive, negative, perceived work content, or how we call it, perceived opportunity to act, perceived leverage skills or perceived capacity to act, perceived productivity, which is no link to stress, and of course perceived reasons for emotions, for positive emotions, but also for stress, negative emotions. And actually, this last bit was the most desired from users that we interviewed, if the technology would be able also to detect the reason for the negative or positive emotions. That would be super helpful. So in December 2020, we produced the architecture. We decided that, we use these certain sensors. You see them all here in this picture. We would like to use them to collect well-being data. we plan to employ AI to process this data, and we decided that we would like really to produce something very innovative to present the information, analyze information for individual, for personal use, to team leaders to support the well-being at team level, and also for HR and for management, sort of organizational barometer, like in the traditional way, how we see it today. And then in spring 2021, yeah, that was a COVID period. Then it started, and we found ourselves in the situation that people left the offices. And for this unfortunate reason, but after all, it was, I would say, the fortunate reason, we decided to focus. People who left the offices, the only piece of, let's say, thing that they took home from the offices was their computers and laptops. And so we kind of have been forced to focus on particular sensing means, and we decided to use computer data usage and to monitor sort of digital behavior of people and how they use computers. So how the mouse directories, the keyboard, key press events, the window switches, how they use, what kind of application they use at work. We of course didn't monitor the application in particular, but we kind of monitored the group of applications. You can see them examples also here that employees use at work. And we also developed very easy to fill self-assessment application that can be filled on mobile phone and also on computer, with obligatory question related to emotion, work content, required skills, and perceived productivity, and optional identification filling the reasons for emotions that has been reported during this day. So for organizations, research and industry, 78% has been participated in the data collection pilots running maximum 6 months. And yeah, this is the very unique real life data sets that we plan to publish at some point together with the research paper. And here you can see very quickly the first initial computer data analysis results. The data source that we have been used, the data size, the classes has been recognized, stress, not stress, and also comparison, for example, how the content was challenging comparing to other contents, and usage of skills, how people use a lot of skills like they perceived compared to and needs to learning compared to other let's say options, and also other classes. And here you can see also the methods used, supervised and unsupervised, and the initial accuracy that has been achieved. And if you have the questions regarding methods used here is also my colleagues, Elena Viljanaldi can answer your question, a particular machine learning algorithm used for that. And then in parallel, of course, with data analytics and AI analyzing well-being data, we started to design our information visualization. The design prompt method has been used here. So we again work with designer. We offered them with users. We offered them several concepts. You can see them here: hill, sky and weather, barometer, flower field, and pressure and burst. I'm not going in the deep discussion, but that was also very, very, very fun and interesting work. Users perceived this concept very differently. Some of them has been found a bit aggressive, some of them has been found a little bit boring, some of them has been found a little bit childish, but ultimately the sky and the weather was the winning concepts. Many individuals have perceived this as a nice and calm. It is sometimes hard to control the weather, and can be sometimes rain and thunder, but everyone, and this might create the negative emotions as well. But everyone knows that after rain, it's always sun is coming. So we decided. So based also actually important bit here, based on this, let's say, additional design work, we kind of identify main design goals for organizational barometer. You can see them listed here. They are calmness. So the aim of the organizational barometer not to create more stress, but instead to, let's say, to produce and induce more positive emotion. Vagueness, because well-being is a complex phenomena, and many commented that that this is not something that should be measured exactly and presented by numbers. Transparency, of course, everyone should feel that the system has an effect, and every input and every employee is taken seriously in this information visualization, data presentation. Relatedness. The system should be designed in a way that it would share the sense of community and feel, make users and employees feel that they are not alone in this stressful time. Well, we have been collecting a lot of data, so of course privacy is paramount in this case. And last but not least, the aim was not, let's say, to create the solution organizational barometer for all the problem and stresses that employees may have at work. But by design, we were aiming for the tool would rather engage employees, team line manager, and HR to start interaction and to try to solve the problem. So we are not kind of delegating the solution to technology. The main aim of organizational barometer to, let's say, to support the recognition of this problem and starting interacting around this problem. And then, so as a result of this, we created, first of all, I will show you this here to show you how it looks like. We created our first visual prototypes using Figma. This is high fidelity prototype. So in these designs, we have not been even thinking what kind of visual libraries exist in this domain, how the data is visualized. What we were really thinking, how we would like, independently of technological means, to visualize the data. We were thinking that it could be the personal widget in each for each individual, and then each individual would have the personal individual view with a lot of information connected to calendar, and where personnel can browse this information and see, for example, their own productivity. Let's say their own productivity during this period that under investigation, and the kind of trend in stress, how many stressful days, or how many % of stressful days, or how many % of positive days has happened during this reporting period and the investigation, and what are the prominent reasons for this positive or negative. So, for example, hovering this mouse, you can see the main reasons for stress days and the main reason for positive days. And also, as we collect also information on what kind of content individuals do daily, so we also, and how many new things are learned during some period of the investigation, this information is also integrated in the prototype. And then there is, of course, the team view, which consists kind of logic of visualization is the same, but the information here, as you can see immediately, is less detailed. So for team leader can, for example, follow generally the trend in the team, but not see the employees here, how many and let's say how much stress the team members have, and again, what kind of reasons on negative sides, and on positive sides prevalent in the team, and how the, let's say, what is the distribution on content and emotions and skills exist or have been existing for particular time period in the team. So that would allow a team leader to see the team as a whole and start interaction with the team members. And then also on the organizational barometer, as you can see here, the information is even less detailed on the organizational level. So here we use a more traditional chart based visualization to integrate information from various teams in the organization. So that was a Figma prototype, and then I quickly go also and show you we started to implement the real software, let's say, implementation of these designs. Here, for example, you can see the prototype from related to organizational data visualization. So, for example, I can select the team. The idea here is that every team is presented in the layer, by the layer, and then you can see here, so monthly stress information around 2021-22. It's a real data integrated here that we collected during our pilot activities. I can also include here the information on positive stress and negative stress. You can see here that the center of this circle represents the 0 point, and then the positive stress accumulated towards the outer circle, and then negative, let's say, stress is represented, accumulated towards the center of this circle. And then this is the accumulative data aggregated, and then of course one may have a look on the average data to see in general was it more positive or a negative period on some months. And then of course for the same team, let's say, for example, the emotions can be filtered still based on the reason for, let's say, positive and negative emotions. Like, for example, here for you, I expressed this from the point of communications and interaction in the organization. For some of employees, of course, it was a positive thing, but for some it is a negative. And as I said, so teams are presented here as a layers, and so we can also add more teams here, and you can see that adding more teams add more information, more layers to this organizational view. And to conclude my presentation, I'm going back to my slide, and so we made first initial evaluation of our prototypes, various elements. Many pilot participants found it very pleasant and pleasant. We have several research papers in the pipelines, and for the future research, there are still, let's say, aspects to research. Of course, some of them are related to stress detection, stress data, wellbeing data analysis, because I mean the aim is still on semi-supervised and unsupervised learning, and the 30 labels, they are maximum that would be workable for people to provide during 3-5 months of data collection. And so finding these good features is a challenge, because the features proposed in the lab studies, they don't work well in the real world environment, because people do many other work tasks at real environment. And then, of course, stress is personal. Yeah, so features that work for one stress not necessarily works for another stress. And then, yeah, of course, some correlations can be still investigated between the concept that we measure it, like, for example, content that people do, skills and emotions and productivity. And of course, on information visualization side, we would like still to research and improve our prototype to make it more interactive, and to insert some elements of reflective thinking. How to, let's say, challenge individual mind to start thinking about own stress and what can be done, why previous week was more stressful than this week, and what can be done about that. And of course, VTT, we're a big research organization. We have many projects. So in this project, we focused on the knowledge professions. And we are also very interested in other domains. And we are preparing also a project that would address, for example, industrial environments. There, of course, the measuring means would be different, and then of course the organizational barometer concept would be different, but the logic in a way could be the same. So the many other research topics will come up with new projects. So thank you very much. That was my presentation. And Atte, please.
Yes, thank you. A bit over time, but
Sorry.
I think we still have time for Q&A session. So I invite people from the audience to put your comments, questions onto the chat, or if you have challenges, or if the chat is somehow blocked for you, etc., just raise your hand and I will pick you up from there. While waiting for comments, I have some prepared for myself, so let's start, and I will actually ask Mikael to answer this one first. So what are the sort of main challenges when it comes to workplace well-being and managing the workplace well-being, and what does the technology bring to the table? And while you're answering this, especially to Anna from Nixu Corporation, what are the sort of regulative challenges that you run into most when you're consulting companies, where there are the most challenges? But first, Mikael, so the main challenges for the well-being, helping well-being, and what the technology can bring to the table.
Yes, thank you, Atte. This is very big and challenging question, of course, but it's a good one. And I think if you look at the so-called big picture here, I think one big issue is that what's the relationship between productivity and well-being? I think at least myself and many colleagues of mine, we think that these two, they are very closely linked to one another. So there can't be productivity without well-being and employee well-being. But on the other hand, this is not so crystal clear for everyone, I guess. And our task as researchers, I think, is to show data and results related to this issue or question. But if we think more practically, I think that we have quite many and high quality technologies already available, but we are somewhat missing collaboration and coordination between relevant parties. And I think, for example, workplace, HR department, top management, occupational health services, and representatives of employees themselves. We should have more, platforms and forums for those parties to think what to do with these technologies we have available, how we together could use them for the benefit of employees. So this is also one aspect I would like to stress quite a lot.
Okay, thank you. And maybe Anna, if you can cover or look from your perspective where the companies have most challenges if they want to apply technologies in for workplace well-being, like the ones that have been discussed here.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's also a big question from a legal point of view. I think probably the biggest challenges they relate to national legislation, I'd say. I mean, this is it's not a we have a lot of very strict employment legislation and also very strict legislation relating to, for example, use of something that we call electronic communications data. So depending on what you in a particular context mean by well-being data, it can be classified as something that is regulated in some sector-specific legislation. And very often these types of sector-specific legislations, they are maybe going back to what the previous speaker just said, they don't necessarily reflect changes in society. So legislation is potentially stricter than what it could be in like our new modernized society, I guess. So the biggest challenges they relate to current sector-specific legislations and how to interpret them in a changed world and modern workplace. So it's not that much about the GDPR and data protection per se, but about really understanding your own specific legislative framework.
Okay, thank you. Then maybe towards Helvar, if we think about the workplace as an infrastructure, and you showed a clever way of utilizing existing sensors and how to sort of apply the information from there to run another system. What kind of other opportunities you see in the this kind of building infrastructure, what kind of directions there are, what kind of opportunities there are?
Right. So yeah, I think one opportunity here is because when we talk about these buildings and um, improving the operation of the buildings, so there is the angle of facility management, and they are mostly interested in making sure that the operations of the building are working correctly. But then if you talk about offices, then HR departments or office administration, they are focused on employee well-being. So they would be defining clear ownership and responsibility of improving this working environment. So I think, yeah, that's one way to develop, the technology further in the smart building context.
Okay. Then maybe if we go into Polytechnic University of Porto, so the technologies that you have developed are there to support the individual and provide recommendations. So that's a very kind of like a providing very a technology to very close to your user, coming sort of very close to skin. Do you think that or what kind of things you see where technology should or could not be utilized? I mean, what kind of problems at the workplace should not be, at least at this point of time, tackled by technology, or what kind of technologies may be a bit sort of may not, maybe something that should not be utilized. If you can explore on that one.
Yeah, so what we wanted to address is that, of course, every participant and every person that has their data collected must be aware of the data collection that is taking place. Like Hannah was presenting, that is very important, and we wanted everyone to feel safe and to feel happy with the data that were being collected. So perhaps the data that must not be collected at the workplace is the data that the participant or the person or the worker or the employee does not feel safe about being collected or being monitored. And regarding recommendations, what we also wanted to see, and that's why we made several focus groups to listen to our end users, was to see what were their thoughts about the recommendation. And we've seen that this is really personal, as you were mentioning, is it's very close to our skin. And maybe someone really likes biofeedback training and the other person does not like it. Or maybe I am very passionate about mindfulness and my colleague hates it and thinks it's nonsense. So we wanted to have this always evolving library of recommendations, so to be able to fulfill the needs of every employee that there's out there. And probably in the future we will also include other features as we've seen data collected from such sources on this consortium, and ours is quite sensible because we are using a webcam to do the PPG censoring. We do not have any kinds of images collected, but this can be sensible for the participants, and that's why we wanted to also explore other parts of or other physiological data collection methods in the future as well.
Okay, so it's really about a lot about being personalized. What kind of technology is suitable for you and what is not. Then maybe to the VTT participants, do you see that the tools that have been or approaches that have been provided here or shown here have an impact to the role of the HR? I mean, the how the human resources will act in the future. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, I believe so, yes. And actually, even for organizational barometer in particular, I mean, this is instant information. You collect it, it's collected today, it's collected every day, it's collected yesterday, it will be collected tomorrow. So instantly, this information can be viewed. Yeah, and on the practical point, we are still thinking to approach to HR. We start from BTT, yeah, and to ask them how they feel about this type of information presentation to them. Yeah, so we will find out. Yeah, hopefully they will find it useful. Yeah.
Okay, and then maybe to conclude, any comments from any one of you? What kind of message you would like to send out to stakeholders at large, whether they are policymakers or trade unions or employee associations, whatever? What kind of vision and message you would like to send out about where the future is going and how they can be part of it? Any takers?
If I may start, I think I don't have any big message to these people, but maybe my message would be that let's collaborate, let's create our future together. So that's I think the only way to proceed and also make good use of these technologies we have developed. but without being on the same page, it's impossible. And that's why I think it's important that we also popularize our results and have, forums where we can discuss and take different views, because there are perhaps only one way to go ahead, but it's a kind of consensus we need around these issues. And I think in this webinar we have dealt with many, important and sensitive issues that need to take into account in the future to make good use of these technologies.
So get involved, I guess that's the message.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and also I would support Mikhail's message in a way. Please contact us. We are looking for more data. We are looking for doing more analytics. We are looking for doing more information design also for other, let's say, application domains. So don't hesitate to come to us and collaborate with us. Yeah, to do more research and to set up more collaborative project. Yeah, around this area. Yeah.
Okay, good. Maybe that's a good way to end this session. So I thank everybody for attending. I thank especially the presenters for their presentations. And I guess this is a good point also to wish everybody a very good, because it's summer, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, a very good and stressless summer. So thank you all and goodbye.